Oh, yeah. We back at it. It's the DGen Nation podcast. You know what it is, what's good, what it do. It's week 2 for the NFL DFS main slate. And it's me again, your host at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find him on Twitter. And I'm joined by one of my two usual co-hosts. That is Matty Dickinson at Matty DFS. And Matty, man, I'm already off to a rocky start. Here I am calling myself the host of the show, and there's 3 of us. But without Kev being here, man, he's a new girl dad. Shout out to Kev, missing the podcast for the first time. So it's just me and you breaking down the week 2 slate.
Yeah, shout out to Kev, man. That's big congratulations. You know, having a little girl, that's awesome. One day I'll have the blessing come in the version of kids, but not yet for me. So Kev can hold down the fort in that regard, and we'll hold down the podcast treats.
Yeah, man, he's got 2 little ones, so he is definitely holding that down for us. Me and you coming in at a cool 0, both between the 2 of us. So, we'll give Kev a little R&R relaxation, and it's just up to you and me to talk shop and break down the slate. So this should be fun, man. We both kind of have similar styles into how we approach things, but in just talking with you earlier this week, I think I may be a little bit more excited about this week than you are.
I absolutely hate this slate. As somebody who only plays 1 to 3 entries every week, it's usually 3 for me. There's just so many good games and so many good values and guys that can absolutely smash this week, and I just feel like I'm going to be underexposed to everybody that I want to play, and there's going to be guys that go off that I, have very little exposure to because I want to cover all of these bases on all these really good matchups. And I hate it. I hate it. I want this week to be over. I'm probably going to end up playing lighter than I should because, like I said, it's going to come down to Sunday morning, and I'm going to be pulling my hair out trying to make all these decisions as these 2v2s and 3v3 swaps, and it's just going to, those things never end well for me.
So what would you say at the point right now as we are, Thursday going into, this week 2, we got a couple days here before the slate kicks off. Like what is really making you hesitant so far, and what could change for you later on for the slate that could open it up and make you feel a little bit better about it?
So when we were talking earlier today, kind of in the DMs, something, that I had thought I pegged some, value guys that were going to be lower owned, like Christian Kirk, 4,300 against Washington. You've got a lot of guys in that price range, especially a wide receiver this week that, are in really good matchups. And so I thought, okay, Kirk just coming off a absolute dud last week. He's going to be unowned. That's a guy who was 13th in the league in air yards per target. And I want exposure to him. Well, you check ownership projections today, and all of a sudden Christian Kirk pops up as the 10th highest owned guy on the slate, 5th highest owned wide receiver. And it's just like on a slate like this where there's so many options, I'm gonna let the field tell me who I'm gonna play by going with the lower owned guys. Because when I can't decide, I always side with the lower owned guy because that gives me a bigger edge on the field if my guy is the one that goes off.
Sure. Yeah, man, absolutely. And we kind of touched on it a little bit last week, but not so much. We talked to people about playing lighter in week 1, right? Kind of just feeling it out, seeing how things are going. And, of course, just like clockwork, that train is never late. Overreaction week 1 comes and everybody feels like they know how things are going to go. Right. And so I feel like this week 2 kind of opens it up where you're going to have a lot of similar teams, a lot of similar builds, a lot of people going the same way, especially, when you're talking about single entry bullets which both you and me like to play. And so I really think that's where the advantage will come in, is where you can find, kind of, okay, we'll talk about it. What are the games that are, just reeking of points that are going to be scored this week, and where can we take advantage of those? outside of the popular guys, as you touched on. Guys, if you're just tuning in, it's the Week 2 NFL DFS main slate here on the DGen Nation Pod. You can follow us on Twitter at DGen Nation Pod. You see our handles right there for both myself and Matty. You see all of the social media handles for the Fantasy Authority there on the screen if you're watching with us. But if you're listening to us, you can follow us on Twitter at FF_authority. TheFantasyAuthority.com is where you can find all the content that we have for you guys, podcasts, articles, links to the videos, what have you. Great stuff going on there, guys. And then we also have the Instagram account that's been going. Shout out to my boy Cody Kutzer. He's been holding it down with the Instagram post there, the Fantasy Authority there for that. Okay, so we're breaking it down on DraftKings, Matty, and let's just kind of get into an overview of the slate before we kind of get into these positions right here, because I really do think that the overview kind of speaks to itself when we're talking about where the high totals are coming from. So, of course, right now, what's sticking out for a lot of people is the Falcons traveling to Dallas. That game is one of the only 2 games, I believe, unless things have changed, with a 50 or higher over under. Looks like it was 52.5. I'm not sure if that's changed recently.
53.5 now.
53.5. Okay, so you've got a point movement there, which is definitely nice. You also got like Texans Ravens too, which is on the slate. And not a lot of people talking about that as well, coming in at 51.5. And then, Packers Lions, I believe it's close to 50. And then Panthers and Buccaneers 48. And there's some other games in here that are interesting. I know you mentioned in the chat too that you were interested in Vikings Colts in some regard as well too. That game looking at around 48. So when we're talking about these games that are high totals, Matty, and I guess we could just roll into the quarterbacks right now to just even kick it off. Like what is interesting or to you, what is sticking out to you in these builds? Because for me right now, it's only a couple people, and only 2 of them are from the games that I mentioned.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously at the top, you can play Lamar on any given slate, especially against a team like Houston. Houston doesn't really have a good defense. And we even saw last week, even if the Ravens come out and absolutely demolish a team, it's going to be because Lamar had a big game. They struggled to run the ball a little bit against Cleveland. Dobbins had some success, but I mean, it wasn't all of their success last week came through the air. So, 8-2 for Lamar. I absolutely think that that's in play. He's going to be the most popular quarterback of the week because he always is. But I can't fault you. And there's enough value this week that I think you can make Lamar work pretty easily too, if you want to roll that route. And I mean, so Lamar, Mahomes too, going into the Chargers, the one concern I have with Mahomes is if the Chiefs get a lead, they showed last week that they will just, pound Edwards-Helaire over and over again on the ground. Like, what do you have, 24 carries in his first ever career game? So I am slightly concerned that Tyrod's not going to be able to keep up because that Kansas City defense isn't that bad. They really limit wide receiver production. So I guess if, we can talk about tight ends when we get there, but Hunter Henry is going to be a mainstay of that Chargers offense all year. And, he's going to have to be heavily involved if the Chargers are going to, keep up with the Chiefs in any way. But I mean, it's hard to not like Mahomes, but I tend to, side with, if I'm not playing a guy like Lamar that can get there with his legs and hit his massive ceiling, because Mahomes is going to need to throw probably 4 touchdowns to match Lamar on a slate like this, or any of these other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about. But you've got some of these game stacks, like you mentioned, they're in these high totals, and you want, these back and forth slugfests where it's just teams just passing over and over and over again. And, I think Detroit and Green Bay, I think that game could turn into that. Stafford was very close to having a big game against Chicago. He had that touchdown catch dropped by Swift at the end of the game, and he was missing Galladay. So, the Lions offense is pretty good, especially through the air. And then you've got Aaron Rodgers, who turned the clock back and came out and just absolutely lit the world on fire last week. It helps he's got Devontae Adams, but at the same time, he went back to his roots of, getting the ball out quick. And he really looked comfortable in that offense for the first time, in the last year or so. Like watching him last year, they're just trying to run the football, and Rodgers never really got in a rhythm. But last week, he looked like his old self. So, Detroit and Green Bay is a game I want a lot of exposure to. You mentioned Atlanta and Dallas. So you've got two defenses that are just essentially don't have any secondary. And both offenses, they want to thrive through the air. Like I know Dallas has Zeke, but Zeke is going to be heavily involved in the passing game. And if Atlanta can just push push Dallas on the other side, which they should be able to based on how easily the Rams were moving the ball against them, especially through the air, then I think that game turns into a slugfest through the air as well. So, I mean, there's two games there right off the top. And then you mentioned Minnesota and Indy. Minnesota, they just basically didn't even play defense last week. And
dude, what is up with the secondary, bro?
They're missing a lot of pieces, and it's a new look defense from what we're used to. They've got some of their big name guys aren't there anymore. Like Mackenzie Alexander's playing in this game. Yeah, playing in this game tonight. And then you've got, Xavier Rhodes is gone. Everson Griffin's on the Cowboys. So it is a new defense in Minnesota. I wasn't expecting them to be that bad, but I mean, Phillip Rivers without Marlon Mack, are they just – I know Jonathan Taylor's going to be mega chalk this week and for really good reason, but are they just going to, turn Taylor and Hines loose to carry the ball 25 times? Or are we going to see Rivers continue to pepper Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton and, hit these running backs in the pass game? Because Rivers is a sneaky play this week, I think, in that game. So this basically goes back to what I said. Like, there are so many good options and so many good games this week that, you can just load up on and game stack. And I almost feel like a game stack is going to be what takes down tournaments this week. You've got to nail, I think, five guys from a game. Pick 3 games if you're playing 3 teams. Pick 3 games, go all in on those 3 games, and just hope one of them goes absolutely nuclear, like the Bucks Rams did last year, or the Rams Chiefs when they combined for 100 points, like something like that, So that might be the strategy I have instead of trying to pick and choose and see, because the field is going to play a lot of these really good value plays, which are they're going to be chalk for good reason. But I want exposure to games that are going to hit maybe 70 points total and have guys at low ownership because of that.
Sure, Matty, and you're nailing it right on the head. I mean, at least for me, in the sense of I want to have exposure to some of these guys who are going to be chalk. I mean, we talked about it pre-show leading up to it. Christian Kirk, a guy who should definitely at his price tag definitely pay off dividends in that game going against a Washington defense that really doesn't seem to look like they're gonna have a rough time this year and not going to be able to stop anybody. And so you're looking at that Arizona offense and saying, okay, after DeAndre Hopkins, who's getting the ball? And that dude's just running routes all over the place. So he seems to be good, but could it just be DeAndre Hopkins just taking over the workload? Drake, if they get up to a lead, just taking over the workload. Kyler rushes in a touchdown and he might not hit. I'm trying to find ways for these pieces to not hit. I know Gallup is going to be very popular. CeeDee Lamb is going to be very popular, in the game against Atlanta. How popular is Calvin Ridley going to be, after he gets a garbage touchdown late last week to kind of really make his week seem better than it was? And how many times have we seen Matt Ryan get into that situation? So that is one too, where I'm like, I don't know how much I'll have Atlanta exposed. I know for a fact that I will have little to none of Matt Ryan this week because of just how I project he's going to be valued, and the pieces aren't there, and they could find themselves just like last week, playing from behind. And yes, he may be forced to throw, but maybe those don't connect against a Dallas D that really tries to, keep everything in front of them and not really give up a big play. I mean, we saw that against the Rams last week. They were letting Robert Woods kind of just run all over them, but damned if they, let the running back get going or give up a big play. So I'm not really interested in pieces from that game. But yeah, I love Aaron Rodgers this week. he's the one that I was kind of touching on, who will be chalk, but I'm okay with eating that. I mean, their implied total is right around 28. You got to love that this week. And the way that he's going about business, like he's got Devontae Adams, he's got Aaron Jones, and then he's got just a couple other guys, with MVS and Allen Lazard. And I think you can definitely say that where the targets are going with Aaron Rodgers. You don't have to think about it. So you're playing him, you're playing Adams, and then maybe, okay, if you're taking a game stack, you say, okay, yeah, maybe I want, one Lions receiver and then one of Lazard or MVS, or taking Aaron Jones with him, because we've seen Aaron Jones get targeted in the passing game yet again, and they did nothing to get him help in the draft. And now we're seeing it come to fruition where Aaron Jones is going to be targeted. He's going to be utilized in this offense in the same way. And no, he might not get the freaking 19 touchdowns or whatever he had last year with all the red zone usage, but he's still going to be a factor. And so you're looking at his price tag this week, and you're saying that makes a ton of sense. And that's what I'm kind of talking about, is ways to attack this. Because if I'm playing Rodgers and I play Jones and I just say, let me just get all the points, and I don't want to talk about, playing Adams, maybe I'll play Hopkins instead of Adams and try and get the same type of usage there. But one of those touchdowns goes to MVS or Lazard. And then Adams, you got to find ways to pivot. So that's definitely something I'm looking to. I love, but yeah, I love Rodgers this week. I mean, the Phillip Rivers call, the dude threw over 40 times last week in a game that they were supposed to win against the Jaguars mightily. So he could definitely, luck into some stuff there. And there's a running back in that game that I cannot wait to talk about, because I played him last week and I'm going to be playing him again, even though he's on the road. And who else did I want to touch? Oh, and then we got to talk about Pat Mahomes here, Matty, because Pat Mahomes is I think going to be going overlooked this week on the road. And like you said, this could be a game where they get up big and Tyrod is not able to do anything on the back to warrant Pat Mahomes kind of reaching what you would expect out of him. But you're looking at a price tag of 7,700, cheaper than Lamar Jackson, kind of just going to go overlooked because he is just kind of priced out, quote unquote. And this dude has 3 touchdown upside every time he reaches the field. So it's like, even if Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he could get there, and so could Mahomes, and he could throw one to him. He's going to, be looking for Tyreek Hill deep. He's going to be looking for Sammy Watkins and Hardman deep, and not even to mention Kelsey being out there. So, even I'm not saying he's going to go out there and necessarily has the same ceiling as a Lamar Jackson with the rushing upside that he should be seeing against this Houston run defense. But just off of the sheer volume or I guess the sheer efficiency of plays that the Chiefs run, he could just go out there and get 250 and 2 by half, running or just throwing all over the place there. What else? And then the other quarterback I wanted to touch on too, who may be overlooked, is Ben Roethlisberger, who was, priced because they had the Monday night game. He's 6,300, so he's 100 cheaper than Deshaun. He's 200 more than Kyler Murray, 100 more than Stafford. We're talking on Draftkings here. And this is a guy who we've always looked to play at home, right? His home splits are really great. You're watching the game on Monday against the Giants, and you see him kind of take that first hit, and he got up and he was kind of limping a little bit, Matty. Like, I was like, oh man, this is going to be a rough season for Ben Roethlisberger if he's looking banged up. But he got back in there, and the Giants were just giving him looks that he was able to eat up. He's feeding Juju. He's feeding Deontay Johnson, getting James Washington involved. James Conner goes out. It doesn't matter. Like, they still got Benny Snell back there who is just rushing and running rampant. And I don't really, Benny Snell, he's coming in at a cheap price tag this week. We can talk about him at running backs. And I don't really know how much I want of him, knowing that he's going to be chalk. I just feel like it could be maybe a Boston Scott trap, so to speak, in this game. But the Broncos didn't show me anything with trying to stop Derrick Henry last week. And Derrick Henry did get there off of sheer volume, getting 30 rushes. I don't know if the Steelers will give Benny Snell that, but this Broncos defense, is kind of missing some key pieces on that end. And I just think they can look to take advantage of it. I love what Ben Roethlisberger showed us on Monday night. And so I'm loving him in GPPs. Both Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster were on the injury report. It looks like both of them should be able to go, but we'll definitely monitor the Friday practices going into the weekend. But I kind of like that stack as a contrarian play this week to, get exposure to a different quarterback elsewhere.
Can I try to sell you on a kind of off the board game stack?
I'm listening, man. I'm always all ears, ready to go.
What if I told you that there's no receiving piece of the Tampa Bay Carolina game that's projected to be over, like the 10 to 12% range?
Okay. Yeah,
you've got Carolina, who's one of the worst defenses overall in the NFL, right? And you've got Tampa Bay, who they were a pass funnel last year, and they just faced Kamara, so I kind of give them a benefit of the doubt, since the Saints can be one of the better teams in terms of running the football, especially when Kamara's in the game. So I think the Bucks could still be this pass funnel defense. And we're going to get a 2% owned Teddy Bridgewater with all these weapons around him. Like you got now Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. He can throw the ball to McCaffrey. Ian Thomas is even usable in the pass game. So like you're getting a Teddy Bridgewater who, their defense is going to give up probably 30 points to the Bucks, if I had to guess. That, like, I don't see a way Tampa Bay, even if Chris Godwin doesn't play, I don't see a way that they don't go out and score 30 times. Or sorry, not 30 times, maybe 30 even times. 30 points. Here we
go, wheels up.
Yeah. So like that's another game that is just, staring me in the face at this, 47 total, and it's kind of getting overlooked because there's a bunch of totals that are in the 49 to 53-ish range. So, but that's a game that I could see going absolutely nuclear. And it's nobody's going to stack it. And I think, that's something, like I said, I want the field to tell me who to play. And if nobody's playing that game, I want to play that game.
No, I definitely. I've seen builds so far this week where people are trying to get a piece of that game, chasing Robbie Anderson only, going to Scott Miller only. And it's like, I get it. Robbie Anderson did look good last week, and he was able to put up that usable score. But how often are we going to be able to rely on that when you're talking about Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore ahead of him on the depth chart? Like, Robbie Anderson always kind of has those games every once in a while, and those are fine, but he's not consistently putting up those numbers. So, and then on the same side, you got Buccaneers who are coming in with an implied total of over 28. So like points got to come from somewhere. And, if you don't really feel comfortable with, Brady, I guess, maybe it's taking a shot on Ronald Jones here in the matchup. And we could talk about that, I guess, with running back. But Tom Brady, having a rough first game in the new uniform and the new digs, it didn't seem appealing, which is why his ownership will be low. But like you said, we talked about it week one. We talked about it preseason. This Panthers defense is going to be exploitable. And so what a better get right spot than, week two here. And you're going to get Brady at, half the ownership of what he was seeing in week one.
I think I would play Teddy just because I think, like you said, Ronald Jones could, come in and have a really good game on the ground, and maybe they don't rely on Brady as much as maybe they should, especially with Godwin out. But on the flip side of that, Mike Evans costs $6,400, and he's going to be around 10% owned. Like, I am so in on that. He played almost the entire game last week on a bum hamstring. He just, he had a touchdown, I think, called back, which would have made his day look much better. He was out there. He just didn't get – I guess he had Lattimore on him all day. And the Saints, they're not a bad defense. So now you go from playing in New Orleans to facing a very porous Carolina defense. And you've got Mike Evans at 6,400. You got DJ Moore on the other side at 6,300. So, you can get the combined, the wide receiver one on each team for a combined $13,000. And like, that's very, very affordable in a game that I think could, go nuclear.
Yeah, man, that's going to be a spot that's going to be tricky because I don't really have much interest in that game as of right now, and that's a game that I feel that's the game that you're kind of talking about, Matty, where you're like a game stack could win the week. Like that is the game stack that could absolutely go nuclear because the pieces are kind of priced appropriately where you can have a feasible game stack with the value plays that we're talking about from the other games. So if those guys are hitting, but not the larger pieces, and you take the bigger pieces from this game, yeah, I could really see that paying off. We had a question in the YouTube chat. I want to get your opinion because I already shared mine, but a guy was asking about Drew Brees or Big Ben this week. I told him Big Ben because without Michael Thomas, they're on the road there, but it is against Vegas. So wanted to get your opinion there.
Yeah, I still think, I still like Brees against the Raiders. I mean, we saw what Teddy was able to do against them last week. And they still have, Emmanuel Sanders is still there. Traquan Smith can now step in and have a big role. And Traquan is a very, he's still a talented wide receiver. He's not Michael Thomas, but he's not just another Jag, just another guy. So it's, I still think, Kamara is still going to be used in the pass game. You could get down to like the 6-yard line where, they run a play action and then hit Kamara on a screen, and all of a sudden you've got a passing touchdown, even though it's going to Kamara. I mean, there's still Jared Cook is still there. I don't know. I think the Denver defense though is definitely attackable, and if Connor's out, which it sounds like he could be, and Snell just might get the start from the go. The Steelers could, they could have to rely on Big Ben even more than what they maybe normally would.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't really dug into that matchup because that's the Monday or the Saints Vegas matchup because that's the Monday game.
Right.
But, I do think, Big Ben, he's going to be, if Connor's out, I'm not really a big Snell guy myself. I think if Connor's out, they may be forced to rely on Big Ben, and that Denver defense is a little bit different than what the Denver defense we're used to with no Von Miller, and they got rid of Chris Harris and brought in some different cornerbacks. So yeah, I think I side with you in that I would go Big Ben.
Yeah,
if the Steelers are going to score, it's going to be because of him.
Right, and just traveling to the West Coast for Brees, they're on the road. I'm not going to say trap game by any means. That's not where I'm going with this, but it just could be more of an uglier game than if it was in the Superdome and we were used to seeing fireworks. Is there anything else at the quarterback position, Matty, before we move on to running backs? Like I kind of wrote down something, and I'll let you go if you have anything.
I was just going to say I had interest in Ryan Tannehill until the A.J. Brown news popped up.
Yep.
Because Tennessee, they ran a week one high of no huddle offense, and they were running at an insane tempo, which is not something we saw from them at all last year. Last year was let's play as slow as we can and just give Derrick Henry 30 carries, and Tannehill's just going to throw the ball 25 times. Well, in week one, that wasn't the case. Henry still had his almost 30 carries, and Tannehill also threw the ball 43 times. So they ran, I think it was like 78 plays on offense, which is by far, the most they have run in the last year.
Yeah.
So, playing Jacksonville, I really would have liked him. But unfortunately, with A.J. Brown likely being out, I still think you can go to a guy like Corey Davis. But I think he could end up being popular because of Brown out, and that, they may just rely on Derrick Henry there instead. But I feel like it was worth mentioning just because, that Tennessee offense, I think, is going to surprise, if they keep playing at that pace. You can play like Tannehill and Derrick Henry with his he was even ran 22 routes last week. So, and
Jonnu Smith was out there looking good as hell too.
Yeah. So I really think that Tennessee offense is going to be one that, one we can definitely load up on this year, but I would love to do it this week against Jacksonville, but with no A.J. Brown, it makes it hard.
No, for sure. And I saw that AJ Brown news. So let's go ahead and get into the running backs here because, we got Mr. Derrick Henry himself, King Henry, coming in as the number 4 running back here on DraftKings at 7,900 price tag, going against a Jacksonville D that looked like they were going to get gashed by Marlon Mack, gashed by Jonathan Taylor. Naheem Hines was getting all over on them in that week 1 matchup. So, I mean, we like to target guys on DraftKings who are going to have their fair share of pass catching opportunities. But when you're looking at the workload that Derrick Henry is getting week in and week out, I really, like, at first look, I was like, I have to find a way to get this guy onto lineups because he's priced around, another guy that I like, but in a road matchup of Dalvin Cook, who is getting fed the ball, and Kirk Cousins only threw 26 times, but had like only 4 passes for a long time in that game. And they just want to run and feed him. Ezekiel Elliott's 8,200. So you're looking at just $300 less than him. Saquon is an interesting pivot to me, and I want to talk about him a little bit. I want to see your thoughts. I see you nodding your head. And McCaffrey comes in at 10K again. And so when I'm looking at these high-priced running backs, and I do have some interest in Clyde Edwards-Helaire for sure at 7,400 and getting exposure to that game, not through Mahomes, but Derrick Henry, like I said, he's got 30 carries against Denver defense that was gashed. Now he gets Jacksonville's, which looks like a defense that we're going to be able to attack every week on the run. And 7,900 just seems too cheap for him. So, if I was making a cash team for sure on any site, I would definitely start with Derrick Henry because the workload is definitely going to be there, especially with AJ Brown looking to be out.
Yeah, Dude, running back is so loaded this week. And this is another reason, like we talked about all these really good game stacks through the air, but then you've got freaking running back position that has so many guys that are in play this week. Like would Derrick Henry be the most popular running back on the slate if he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're right, Matty, because the Monday Night Football game, he was already going to have this price tag.
Yeah. So like, he ran 31 times for 116 yards, and Tennessee threw 2 touchdowns from the 1-yard line. Not 1, but 2. Right. So he very easily could have scored 2 touchdowns and had 32 DraftKings points, and people would have saw 7,900 versus Jacksonville, and just, everybody would have clicked him. Well, right now he's the projected 4th highest in running back, and I think that's a mistake. So I think Derrick Henry is, and like I mentioned too, he ran freaking 22 pass routes in week 1. And if AJ Brown's out, that's just another excuse for them to give Henry the ball in the pass game. So I really like him. We can talk about Barkley. Dude, I don't know that I can just play him over Zeke.
No. And Zeke is a great play this week. Zeke is arguably the play when you're looking at, how Atlanta has kind of had games go. And we saw this last year. I was alluding to it. Like the way Atlanta plays, like they're not able to capitalize on opportunities. So Matt Ryan is able to put up these numbers because they're in a hole by 10 points, 14 points, 17 points, and they have to keep throwing and throwing and throwing, which takes out their run game. But I could totally see a scenario where Zeke goes out there and kind of just takes charge of this game. And we'll talk about the wide receiver that we both love in this game, and I'm going to start my builds with him. But, the way that they're using Zeke, Mike McCarthy's using him, you gotta be interested in having him. First, if you're not playing Henry, I would think you're playing Zeke in this home matchup right here. But Barkley, dude, I mean, they tried everything to get him going against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was smothering this guy. I mean, he couldn't sniff the line of scrimmage in the first half of that game. And, for whatever reason, and now we're going to have to deal with Jason Garrett's bullshit with another, great back. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Utilize your weapons. It just was frustrating to kind of see his workload. But now you have a get right spot, with the Bears. They just, Adrian Peterson, was running all over them. DeAndre Swift running all over them. And it's a get right spot for Barkley. They know that they have to take advantage of this team, and they're going to be, the Bears are going to be blitzing and showing coverages all along. But I think he's definitely going to get some passing work here. The passing work that he saw against the Steelers was atrocious. I'm not even. Let me pull up his target. Well, no, he saw 6 targets. So he's definitely going to see that, if not more, against the Bears here. And it's just one of those ugly games, right? They're traveling on the road. They're going into Chicago. Not going to really be any fans. But this is a game that I could see, if the Bears can put up points on the other side, going over what the total is right now, because the Giants just have such big playmakers to kind of take advantage here, and the Bears could be, playing from behind in this game. I mean, if Slayton was able to get loose against the Steelers defense, like he's going to get loose against the Bears. They got Shepard, they got Tate supposed to be back. Evan Ingram is going to be looking for a get right spot. I mean, Saquon Barkley at 8,400. You're getting like Christian McCaffrey light as far as usage, but for $1,600 less.
See, this is why I hate this slate, because I can come up with a reason as to why I think somebody is, can have a ceiling game in all of these matchups. So like, you pull up the week 1 stats. You mentioned the game that the Lions had on the ground, and the Lions gave up the worst percentage of explosive run rate in the NFL in week 1. So of the 29 carries, 6 of them went for, as the category of explosive plays, which I believe they classify as 15 yards. So you're looking at, a guy in Saquon Barkley who's known for his explosive plays on offense, facing a Chicago defense that just got absolutely gashed on the ground against a Lions team that just signed Adrian Peterson off the streets. So it's like, I've got Zeke sitting there against Atlanta in a massive total. I've got King Henry, who's going to touch the ball probably 30 to 35 times. And then you've got Barkley, which probably nobody's going to play. I can check real quick. Let's see. Yeah, he's not in the top 10 on what I'm looking at here. Yeah, he's around 15th highest owned running back. So like that's another spot where it's like, Barkley, like you said, it didn't matter that the Steelers had allowed the Giants to have negative adjusted line yards on offense in week 1. That Jason Garrett was just going to continue to call rush plays for Barkley, and he ended up with six yards on 15 carries. But he had 9 targets. So it's like they're going to give him the ball no matter what the situation is, and he still scored 13 fantasy points against that brutal defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, man, it's like Barkley, we know he's got slate-breaking upside. We've seen it time and time again where he goes out and has 35 to 40-point games, and if he's going to be unowned, he makes let's say you're playing a Dak team and you go like Dak, Amari, and Gallup, and then you run it back with like a Russell Gage or Hayden Hurst or somebody that's cheaper on the Falcons side. You can play Saquon instead of Zeke and just hope that all of the Cowboys touchdowns are through the air with Dak.
Right.
And just kind of tell yourself, narratives, make a story like that. Okay, if Dak is getting all of these, what's my correlation? I don't want to play Zeke, even though Zeke could catch, have receiving touchdowns. That's maybe not the most likely outcome. Okay, let me go with the pass catchers at the wide receiver position, and then I'm not playing Zeke. Let me play Barkley instead, basically the same price. I think that's how you get to Barkley. I don't know, man. It's just so scary fading Zeke against Atlanta, especially when the Cowboys don't have Jarwin anymore. Like everything's going to be so concentrated.
It does make it tough. I would try and find ways to, with the wide receiver value that we have, and we can touch on, like I would try and find ways to get Zeke and Barkley, onto some builds if I can make it work.
The issue then is you just can't play Henry probably.
No, you can't play Henry, which is
fine.
On DraftKings, I think you could live with that. if they're both able to get there. Yeah, North of the Star commenting on the Periscope, he's saying he can't fade Zeke, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you, bud. But we're trying to find ways and edges to kind of get over on the field because his ownership is going to be there. But he's good chalk. He's good chalk.
And I'm not saying to fade Zeke by any means. Like, I wouldn't just say play Barkley over Zeke for the heck of it. Like, think about it in terms of the correlation of the lineup that you're building. So, like,
right.
if you need Dak to smash, if he goes out and throws 4 touchdowns, sure, Zeke could catch 1 or 2 of them. But the real likelihood is that, Cooper's got 2 and Gallup's got 1, and maybe CD snuck in his first one of the year, something like that. So if that's the case, Zeke now has no touchdowns, and now you have Saquon Barkley, who just caught 9 passes for 70 yards and 3 scores.
Yeah.
To go along with his 100 yards rushing. And all of a sudden you have to have Barkley to win a tournament. So it's just, it's just little lineup correlations like that kind of help you make decisions on a slate where it feels like you can't make the right decision because everybody's in a good spot.
Sure. And this Falcons pass D is just so atrocious that it's like, why not let why not let Dak just eat them alive, and then I think the opportunities could come there from Zeke, in the red zone and on the goal line 100% for sure. But there could just be, 30-yard pass to Cooper, 40-yard pass to Gallup, 30-yard pass to CD. It's like they could just eat them up. Through the air and just get there, and then Zeke's not getting the opportunities that you need. But we can't not talk about the main pretty much like the person that people are putting into their lineups when they start this week, and that's Jonathan Taylor there for the Colts, coming in at 5,700, I believe, on DraftKings.
Yep.
5,700, goes against a Minnesota team that, like you said, the defense is not scaring you. I think people and listen, 5,700, even if you're playing like redraft, right, or you're playing dynasty, like everybody kind of knows Jonathan Taylor, but you still are going to get some people who are just looking at the kind of box score and look, okay, he only had 9 rushes and, he got a little bit of passing work, but only put up 14 points. So he's not going to be as owned as he should be. So I don't think ownership is going to be a necessarily reason to fade him. He's in a great spot right here, and they definitely, want to feed him on the ground. Nyheim Hines is not going to get as many carries as, Mac was going to get to spell him. So he definitely is a guy where I'm putting him into lineups and not thinking about it, because at that price tag and in this matchup, the way that the Colts want to play, and I don't have faith in Rivers. So it kind of makes me nervous of how he's going to get red zone opportunities, but he still is just such a great play at 5,700.
Oh, no, I totally agree. And what could maybe eat into some of his ownership is if we get Benny Snell chalk.
Right.
I think, either A, people are just going to play both of them, or people are going to try to fit 2 of Barkley, Henry, Zeke, and they're going to say, okay, well, I need that 900 from Taylor to Snell. And we saw, Hines is going to be pretty involved too. So let me just play Snell instead of Taylor. So, I think that the Snell news could help Taylor's ownership, maybe. Taylor's still projected as the highest owned running back on the slate, and for good reason. Minnesota looks so bad in week 1.
Right.
And like you said, Taylor he's that dude. Like, he is legit, man.
Yeah.
Like, out in space, he just looks like he's playing at a completely different speed compared to everybody else. So I don't know that I can make a team without Taylor this week.
Yeah, man. And these rookie running backs are just studs. He talked about CEH being another pivot too in that game. And yeah, North to Star, we agree. I think, CEH coming in at 7,400. He's kind of going to get overlooked. They're playing in that afternoon game there. I think he's kind of priced out as to where people want to play him or pay for him. So the ownership there is just not going to be what it should be, knowing what we just saw him do against Houston. I mean, he is going to be out there on the field. Like, Darrell Williams will come out every now and then, But like other than that, there's nobody else to spell him. So he's going to be out there. He's going to be utilized in so many different ways. And I definitely want to have some CEH this week because of that reason. Because you're going to be looking at your teams, and if you hit on what you think will happen in the noon games, and you have like Clyde Edwards-Helaire left while people have, Lamar Jackson or, Will Fuller, or I'm looking at some of these other games, when is the Cardinals game? Cardinals game is
that's at 4.
That's at 4 too. So, DeAndre Hopkins, Kenyon Drake, Terry McLaurin, you can definitely find ways to get the edge there on that side. Speaking of which, and I want to touch on Rockout too, because he had a question in YouTube chat just talking about Adrian Peterson. If you have any interest in playing him this week, I don't on DraftKings, but
no, because think about all these running backs we've talked about already that are in
right.
ceiling spots. Like they're not just in good spots; they're in ceiling spots where they've got a path to absolutely smashing to the point where they have to be on your team or you can't win a tournament without them. And I don't think Peterson's workload is safe enough to even get that cute this week. Like if you need the value, pay down at wide receiver. We'll talk about a lot of good receiver value this week that has a safe floor and good upside that I would rather play instead of AP.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. I want to get your thoughts on Drake at 5,900. I definitely have some interest in playing him, knowing that he is going to be in that later slate, and people are really on the receivers right now. And this matchup against the Washington football team, that's going to take me a while to get used to. But at home, we like our running backs who are favored at home. This is Drake. He's seeing the field. I know that Chase Edmonds is there to spell him, and that's kind of frustrating, when you're talking about the workload that he could get, and possibly if they are running away with this game, you could see more of Chase Edmonds than Drake. But if somehow, if we get turnover Kyler, with the Washington defense kind of looking like they're gonna not be great. I'm not saying that, but be a little bit better. They have talented pieces on that side. Is there any interest for you in getting some Drake? Because I'm finding builds where I can get him and play him in the flex.
See, I don't know what to make of Washington, because last year they were a defense we really wanted to target with the opposing ground games. And then in week 1, they did, the Eagles really struggled to run the ball, but the Eagles were missing their entire offensive line basically. So it's it's a who's who of like, is this Washington defense? Their front 7 is going to be very, very good in the pass rush all year. That's just how they're built. But are they going to be a good run defense as well? And I think that remains to be seen. The issue I think I have with Drake is Edmonds was also being pretty utilized last week. And he was getting some high value touches, and I think he even had a touchdown in near the goal line.
Yep.
So that kind of scares me there. And Drake's 5,900. I'd rather pay $100 more for Miles Sanders, who I don't even think is listed as questionable anymore. The Eagles are favored by 1 at home in a 46.5 total. I think that's a really good spot. We saw Zeke have success against the Rams just last week. The Rams were a defense you could attack with running backs last year as well, especially pass catching running backs. So I think Miles Sanders makes a lot of sense. A little conspiracy theory is I think the Eagles, they maybe thought they could win that game last week without having to run Sanders out there and risk him re-injuring his hammy.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So, because he was logging practices before that game against Washington last week. It's not like he was missing practices. Like, he was out there, and then they said he's not even making the trip. So it's right. I don't know. It was just kind of mixed signals, but it sounds like he's already been ruled a definite, like early in the week, he's definitely playing this week. So I'm not worried about, Miles Sanders losing work there to Boston Scott too much. And Boston Scott looked horrible last week anyways.
Right.
So
terrible.
You got him, and then you got David Johnson at 5,700 against Baltimore. I know that the Ravens are probably going to blow them out, but the Browns just ran for 130 yards on the ground against them. The Ravens gave up good rushing production last year as well. David Johnson, he's going to be involved in the pass game in games that they're losing. We saw that last week against Kansas City. He's going to be out there the whole time. So, and I even think, isn't Duke Johnson banged up? I can't remember.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he's questionable. So, like, if Duke is out, there's nobody there to even spell David at all, except for very, very rarely. And he's another guy, you got all these safe workloads with, guys who, if they get in close, have touchdown equity. So,
right.
I don't know, but this keeps going back to what I keep saying is, I hate the slate because I can make a case for so many different guys.
Right, and we're talking about your GPPs of the worlds here, but I really do think it starts with Jonathan Taylor at this price tag, Zeke in that game as your true running back spots, and then you're just if you're building only 1 to 3 lineups, you're kind of playing around with that and seeing what receivers you can kind of get or what games you're really liking and going from there. But I really do think it has to start there, and then if not, you're looking for pivot pieces to that could probably get you that same usable score. So like a Derrick Henry off of Zeke, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We kind of touched on Aaron Jones. I don't think he falls into that same category, but he's still, if you're playing 20 lineups or even 150, you definitely should have some exposure to him if you're not playing Rodgers. We haven't even touched on like Malcolm Brown, who has kind of taken over the lead role for a Rams team that's going to be traveling on the road this week as they play against the Philadelphia Eagles as well. And we talked a lot about Antonio Gibson in our first look of going against the Eagles there. So I know Malcolm Brown will garner some ownership. I'm not looking to play him at all myself, but him being at 5,800, right around these guys will definitely garner some exposure. North of the Stars asking us here on the Periscope, Zach Moss could fall into 2 touchdowns against Miami. Thoughts?
No, absolutely. So I actually was reading an article done by one of the former TFA guys, Kent Wayrock, on PFF today, and he did he does a comparison of actual fantasy points scored versus expected based on the where guys touch the ball and like their value, basically how high value were their touches, and how they perform based on how they should have performed. And Moss was one of the guys who he scored 12 points, but based on what his touches were and like how close they were to the end zone, he should have scored 24 fantasy points. So like, I mean, there's another guy, they're giving Moss all these high value touches like in the pass game and near the goal line. So Miami run D gave up, 220 yards on the ground versus the Patriots last week. I know most of that was to Cam, but still, like, that's still a run defense. Yeah, I don't hate Zach Moss at all. It just goes back to there's a lot of options this week, and he just kind of gets left off the list.
Yeah, man. Running back just keeps talking to us. I wanted to touch on one more thing before we move it over to wide receiver. And that was So the Bears in this game on the other side, we were talking about Saquon. This kind of feels, and it's tough on DraftKings because they have 2 usable guys, right? They got David Montgomery, they got Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen, obviously, he is the better back, usually priced because of his price, because of the way he's utilized catching passes. But this feels like a game where if the Bears can kind of take control of this game, that David Montgomery could kind of fall into 2 touchdowns here against a Giants team that just gave up 100 yards on the ground to Benny Snell. And David Montgomery, he didn't look 100%, but he definitely, looked better from dealing with that groin injury that he was, expected to miss significant time with. And so, you kind of get him in the spot going against a Giants team that looked like they could be exposed on the ground. And I could see him, kind of getting some use there while, Mitchell did get that 3 touchdown game, another 3 touchdown game against the Lions, and that looked nice. But how he got there was ugly. And they could look to kind of establish the run early and kind of take control of this game by giving David Montgomery touches.
Yeah, I mean the Giants could come out and look awful on the other side, and it just could be a slow game where the Bears just want to run the ball. I don't think the Bears ever want to just play. Let's go out and let Trubisky throw the ball 100 times, and we'll try to win that way. I think that they definitely favor running the ball first, and if it's working, they can stick with it. My issue with Montgomery is 5,600 isn't really cheap, and he has to score 2 touchdowns for him to even come close to being a guy that you got to have to win a tournament.
Yeah.
So I just think, with him being near Jonathan Taylor and David Johnson and Miles Sanders and Kenyon Drake, like just being priced near those guys, and even, Ronald Jones is 500 below him or 400 below him. So it's like he's just kind of in a weird spot. Maybe if he was like upper 4s, I would consider it. But 5,600, you need a pretty big game out of him.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that price too. Yeah, I mean, Nyheim Hines at 5,300.
Yeah,
looks great. I mean, even Dobbins at 5,100. It might be some to forget about Mark Ingram there.
Yeah, and Zach Moss 4,800. Like, I don't even hate that if you need value.
Yeah, that's good too.
I don't think that this is a Benny Snell blow up game again. I'm not going to ride that chalk. No,
I'm honestly, and this is a guy who roots for the Steelers on Sundays too. I want to avoid that chalk. This feels like a trap, and we just saw a trap with Boston Scott as well in a better matchup, I think. So I don't know if I could go there. Especially on DraftKings too, because he's not really catching passes out of the backfield. They're bringing in Jalen Samuels to do that. So okay, so
one other running back I do want to kind of touch on, maybe not for this week, but just one to think about going forward, is James Robinson in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
I know that's a Kev special. He wanted to play him last week, and I wouldn't let him. I mean, he 16 carries and a target for 90 yards from scrimmage.
Right.
It's like he's going to be cheap until, maybe he has 1 week where he explodes, which, shouldn't be this week, I don't think, against Tennessee. But
no, shouldn't be.
If you're looking for a high volume guy, instead of paying like a, 5,600 for Montgomery, you can look at 4,400 for James Robinson. If you're that's more of like a cash play, because I don't think he's got a massive ceiling. At least, it's kind of an unknown. But, he's should get you double-digit fantasy points, and he's 4,400. So,
yeah, no, that's a good call there. I definitely want to keep an eye on James Robinson, and even having some of him, this week. He is on the road, but you definitely love the workload that they were giving him. He is their lead guy, and so to kind of get leverage on some of these other wide receivers that we're going to touch on, that could be a good play there. Let's talk about the wide receivers, Matty, for this week. And at the top, we got 8,100 Devontae Adams, who I wrote up in my Building Blocks article, came onto him late, just thinking about the Green Bay situation and how they had nobody. And he really wasn't, being talked about at all last week as far as being utilized. And he definitely paid off the 8K price tag last week. Just he's going to get double-digit targets, I feel like, every week with the current roster and depth chart that they have there in Green Bay. So he's going against a Detroit team that, just gave up passes all over the place to guys like, Darnell Mooney and Javon Wims for the Bears. Allen Robinson was getting his. If Mitchell could, hit him for some, it would have been a better day. Anthony Miller caught a touchdown against them. Like, Devontae Adams is a great play again this week, one that you should be trying to figure out ways to get onto, your rosters and definitely consider. But then you have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who, looks like the 2018 DeAndre Hopkins, when this dude was getting 150 targets. I mean, 16 targets in the first game, 150 yards, no touchdowns, but still getting 30 points without scoring. I mean, that's ridiculous. So you definitely love that usage. And he, I made a first build where I had, him going to Kyler. And I know that's going to be very popular, Kyler going to him, but it's going to be very popular. But you got to like what you're seeing out of that. Tyreek Hill, 7,500 against the Chargers. And, I wish Kev was on the podcast to kind of talk about this as being the Chiefs homer. But one thing we've talked about before, time and time again, is just what ridiculous splits that Tyreek has when he's on the road, right? Like he just, for whatever reason, outside of Arrowhead, seems to put up just massive numbers. And, going against a Chargers team here where we kind of don't know how their secondary can really be exploited with that first game going against Joe Burrow in his first NFL game ever. Like the game was just so ugly. So now you have to come out here and show it. And you were talking about it too, with Derwin being out last week, Matty, and week one, and how, exploitable possibly this team could be. We're definitely going to see it come to life here this week when Pat Mahomes gets going. So I love getting some shares of Tyreek Hill as the contrarian play. Off of, we're looking at guys like Julio Jones here, who's got a Q tag. Looks like he was limited with a hamstring, but I think he'll go. He's going to be, garnering some ownership. Adam Thielen, talk about the only guy for their team. This guy is the only guy. It's just the target share is not going to be as heavy because Cousins doesn't throw the ball, nearly as much as some of these other guys, but had 6 catches for 110. And 2 touchdowns, to make his day good, 34 points there for week one. So he's another guy I think people could go to. And then, we're getting into Calvin Ridley, who's the 6th priced wide receiver on DraftKings this week. It's crazy, but that's where we are, where the Falcons have 2 guys in the top 10 because of how Matt Ryan is playing, but he comes in at 6,800. And then, it's really, I kind of want to go into the mid tiers here, Matty, to be honest with you. I mean, I outside of like the top 3 guys of Adams, Hopkins, and Hill, like I really don't know how much I'll have of any of these guys. I am interested in Juju Smith-Schuster because I will have Big Bennett ownership, but Deontay Johnson is 4,500. So if he's healthy, I'm definitely going with him. We talked about the cheap guys for Dallas. Amari Cooper, which is a guy that we both have talked about off of the podcast. He's a limited participant. I think he's fine dealing with some foot thing. 14 targets in that first game. Amari Cooper, and you can talk about how he plays at home and everything when they're favorites because those numbers are great. But 6,300 is way too cheap for this guy and what should be a fireworks type of matchup. And it just time and time again, we've seen him put up numbers with since he's joined up with Dak there, and it's just been a resurgence since leaving Oakland. And this guy he always gets overlooked. So I love that. Love Marquise Brown at 6,200 going against Houston when the Chiefs were just able to, get some deep passes against this Houston secondary. And Marquise Brown, showed us a lot in week one that he's not just going to be a deep guy. He's going to be, be able to be looked at to be somewhat of a possession receiver for Lamar. So love him coming in at 6,200 against the Texans. And then, with AJ Brown being out, do I have some interest in Corey Davis? Sure. I don't know how much I'll have of him. The Carolina guys are definitely interesting to me, but it's hard to play them as one-offs, I feel like. Who else was I looking at here as I was going through the teams? Yeah, I mean that's pretty much where I'm at right now, Matty. So talk to me about the plays, and we can talk about some of these other guys for GPPs.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you did a great job covering it up top. Just to touch on the ownerships, what it's looking like right now. You've got Adams and Julio that are going to be the most popular up top, followed by Tyreek, and then actually DeAndre Hopkins comes in 4th out of those 4. So if you do like Kyler Murray and you want to play a team with him, since Christian Kirk is the chalk, I would actually pair him with Hopkins because that's going to be the not popular combo is how I would approach that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, all 4 of those guys absolutely in play. I think they all have a path to a ceiling game and they all have a great floor. You touched on, kind of being a little scared maybe of Ridley being the 5th highest priced wide receiver. And I think I agree. I think I would rather just pay up for Julio, or there is maybe my favorite value of the whole week at 4,800, my man, Russell Gage.
Okay, here we go.
What if I told you that Russell Gage, since week 12 of last year, has averaged 8.5 targets a game? And last year as a whole, he finished tied for third in red zone targets on the Falcons. And he already had 2 red zone targets week 1, which was second on the team behind Ridley, who had 3.
I would say get some of them damn targets to
at
Julio.
4,800. True. So at 4,800, you're giving me a guy who's averaging 9 targets a game and is having red zone usage, and he's 4,800, and he's currently projected to be unowned. He's I think he's the pivot of the week off of your Christian Kirk and your Deontay Johnson. I think Russell Gage. I mean, he just went for 100 yards last week on 12 targets, and nobody's going to play him against Dallas, which is known for getting shredded by slot receivers.
Do you have ownership numbers for wide receivers? Because I'd be willing to say that Russell Gage is more popular than Deontay right now.
So I've got Deontay as the second highest owned wide receiver on the slate.
What?
Behind only Devontae Adams.
Okay. Yep. All right.
And then let's see, where is Mr. Russell Gage? Russell Gage is not even on the top 3 pages.
Wow. Okay.
Russell Gage is coming in around like 35th highest owned wide receiver.
Yeah, I've seen this guy on so many waivers and redraft teams and dynasty teams, so I figured he was going to be a little bit more popular than definitely 3 pages in.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I thought Gage and Deontay would be the popular, and I was going to play Christian Kirk because of that. Right. But now Christian Kirk is actually the guy that everybody wants to play, and with Deontay, and nobody wants to play Russell Gage instead. So, like I said, I'm going to let the field tell me which values and which guys I'm going to play this week based on who they're not playing. And they're not playing Russell Gage because they're playing the other 2 guys. Okay, I'm playing Russell Gage at 4,800 against Dallas in the 53.5 total.
Yeah, that's nice. And when we talk about, good ways to be contrarian, I mean, that is a game that we expect to have points. And Russell Gage is seeing targets. So Russell Gage can definitely pop, and the ownership is not justifying what his ceiling is potential to be. So I love that, Matty. I love that call. How would you rank the guys outside? So after Amari Cooper for Dallas, are you looking to Gallup more, or would you be looking to CeeDee Lamb more?
I think Lamb is probably going to be more popular because he's cheaper. But man, I'm a big Gallup guy. I don't even think we'd be having this conversation if they didn't rule off that Gallup catch on Ramsey that they called offensive pass interference. That wasn't even a push off. But hey,
Mr. Flop, Mr. Flop.
Yeah, nothing like getting paid millions of dollars to flop. But I digress. So it would be, if I was choosing, it would be Amari and Gallup would be the 2 Dallas pass catchers that I go with. And you mentioned Amari smashes at home, and there's no, like, when he usually struggles when there's a top cornerback on the other side, and there's no top corners for Atlanta.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah. So I really like that game, and I like Russell Gage.
Beautiful thing. I love that. Yeah, Russell Gage is definitely, I'm going to have to look into him a little bit on some builds if that really is what his ownership is going to be. Again, this is Thursday. Could change, especially with Julio having that Q tag. But my goodness, if Julio has the Q tag and then ends up playing, people will still play him. And then Russell could definitely, fall down the charts there. With the Packers, too, having cheap guys, we got Lazard in the 5,300, I think, is where he's coming in on Draftkings, and MVS is priced right around where Deontay is. So how do you rank those guys as they come in this week?
I haven't looked at their 2 specifically, their ownerships, but I think I side with Lazard this week over MVS just because MVS had the big game last week. And isn't Coleman out for Detroit, their slot corner?
So Coleman's out. Trufant, I think, will miss too, as he got banged up in that same game against the Bears. So it's gonna be wheels up for this Packers offense, the wide receiver group there. MVS, we could be talking a different story about him. He drops, drops a couple passes, one being a long bomb for Rodgers. Leads to Devontae having a big game, leads to Lazard kind of, getting there as well too. So yeah, I lean more Lazard as well. But it does need to be said that, Rodgers was trying to find MVS on some of these plays early. So I do think he'll definitely put up usable weeks or winning weeks, not usable, winning weeks. But I wanted to get your take there. One more thing before we move on. Well, two more, I guess. So Washington pass catchers. Well, let me do that next because I'll want to use that to segue into tight end for Washington. So before we get into Washington pass catchers, how do you feel about Preston Williams this week? I know that Devontae Parker is on the injury report. I'm not sure what the status is, but he could miss, which could then put Tre'Davious White on him. It would be in that game, Preston Williams, that is. But if Devontae Parker were to play and Tre'Davious is on Devontae, could we see, some plays breaking favorable for Preston Williams in this game?
I don't want to play anybody against Buffalo. I think their defense is too good. I'd rather play a guy like Jalen Reagor at 4,100 against the Rams. That's fair.
One catch for 55 yards, Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, and we would also be having a different conversation about him if Wentz didn't completely miss him. He was wide open for like a 70-yard touchdown, and Wentz overthrew him by about 2 yards.
Oh, it just
so he would have had 2 catches for probably 125 yards and a touchdown.
Ugh.
Yeah,
it's just plays, dude. Plays can make or break it.
Yeah. So Reagor, 4,100. He's the epitome of a tournament play because they're going to target him deep. I still don't know what his volume is going to be because only 4 targets last week. You would think it would be a little bit higher than that, but it was his first game, as a rookie. So I guess maybe they could be easing him in back from his shoulder, but it's not like it was a leg injury where he needs to monitor his snaps. So I don't know. I think he's an very interesting tournament play at 4,100. You can definitely do worse than that.
Yeah, I hear you there, brother. Okay, so Washington pass catchers. Terry McLaurin, he was, we thought that he was mispriced, and he was mispriced last week, 5,600. 7 targets, 5 for 61, didn't score a touchdown, but still 11.1 points. It's not going to really get you there. If you played him in cash, it really didn't kill you, I don't think, last week if you had the other right place to go along with it. But he comes in at 5,900 against this Arizona team that's just going to play fast pace, right? They're going to try and just put up points, be fast paced, give Washington more opportunities to have the ball in their hands. And so with those more opportunities, even at 5'9", are you interested in playing McLaurin? And I think he could, maybe he's a pivot off of somebody that we'll talk about at tight end.
Yeah, I think McLaurin would be the guy that I run in a game stack there. Like if you're playing Kyler Murray and you need Washington to keep up and avoid the Cardinals just running the ball, it would be Terry McLaurin on the other side that I'd run as opposed to Logan Thomas. We saw the ceiling games that McLaurin can have last year, and he can do it on unlimited targets. So, and Pat Pete, he's getting kind of dusty, getting a little old. So.
Is he? He's getting a little dusty.
He's getting a little dusty. So I think some young, fresh legs. The speed of McLaurin, I think, he can make plays, especially, they're playing from behind. Last week, they played from in front for, once they took the lead in the third quarter, they didn't look back. So, I like McLaurin in that game, especially if you're game stacking it.
I hear you too. I think I tend to agree with that, especially where his projected ownership is looking to come in at. Okay. I think, If you don't have anything else, I think those. Oh, we gotta talk about this. So Paris Campbell, he's been getting blown.
I'm glad you brought him up.
Blown up on Twitter. He's blown up on Twitter. Talk about somebody who looks dusty. Is that T.Y. Hilton, which would pay me because I love T.Y. Hilton have for a long time. But Paris Campbell looks like he is going to take over this offense. 9 targets last week, 6 catches for 71. Even got a rushing attempt there. So they're definitely looking for ways to utilize him in the office. Michael Pittman doesn't look ready. So you outside of T.Y. Hilton, like you got Jack Doyle, you got Michael Pittman, Nyheim Hines is going to see some carries. You got a rookie at running back. Like Paris Campbell might have carved out a role for himself in this offense.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And the all the reports out of training camp leading up to the season were saying that Phillip Rivers does not want to throw the ball down the field. He wants to work, the short middle part of the field, wants to target the running backs and the tight ends a lot. Well, Paris Campbell is going to run a ton of little drags and slants across the middle of the field, for within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And that's right up the alley of Phillip Rivers, who wants to play ball control, with
right.
this. They're going to try to rely on the run game and control the ball and, not turn the ball over. And Paris Campbell fits that. And like, he is very deadly when he gets the ball in his hands. He's got 4.3 speed and a lot of yards after catch. So he doesn't necessarily need the air yards to pay off. And we saw 9 targets in week 1, tied T.Y. Hilton for the team lead. So I think he's here to stay. And he's also a guy 4,500. Give me Paris and Gage this week over Deontay and Kirk, and they're all projected so similar. Just give me the lower owned guys.
Yeah, Deontay, I love him, and that's because how much Big Ben I'm going to have. But yeah, Paris Campbell will make it onto builds. That is without question. If he's going to be seeing this work, and I mean, thinking back to, what we're getting out of wide receivers from the Chargers, Mike Williams going out there, like days when Travis Benjamin was paying off because Phillip Rivers had to throw it near 50 times. And not to mention Keenan Allen being that possession guy for him, doing everything that he wanted, with Austin Eckler too, being in the backfield. So we have yet to see. I mean, we think Nyheim Hines can definitely take on that Austin Eckler role, but we know that there's going to be anywhere from, 30 to near 50 passes from Phillip Rivers on a given week, just of how the style he plays. And so that means there's a lot of targets to go around. Campbell.
Too, also, if you think about it also, like with Mac being out, I don't think they're just going to give, Jonathan Taylor 25 carries. Right. I don't think they're going to give Nyheim Hines double, he's not going to come in and just run the ball either. That's not what he's there for. He's there to catch passes. So I think, with Mac being out, we could see maybe Rivers drop back to pass more than maybe he normally would.
Yeah.
Just because of the makeup of the offense.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that we touched on Paris Campbell, because I know that even though we haven't gotten a comment yet on him, that people will definitely be looking to play him.
I'm really glad you brought him up, because he's one of my favorite plays this week.
Hell yeah,
slipped my mind. I'm trying to watch the end of this Bengals-Browns game at the same time.
I hear you. We got a minute 30 left in the game there. Joey B trying to make it a respectable loss.
He's trying to cover the spread is what he's trying to do.
Yeah, man. And we would definitely appreciate that. My DraftKings Sportsbook account would definitely appreciate that for sure. Okay, let's move on to tight ends, as we're getting ready to round out this podcast here with tight ends and defense. But I wanted to bring up the Washington situation, because I really was just making builds, Matty, all this week, and just looking at Logan Thomas's price and saying, how am I not going to have this guy? And that's when I was like, well, I guess I'm playing cash this week. I didn't play cash last week, but he is going to be the chalk tight end at 3,600. Just of how he was utilized in that offense, 8 targets coming in. And, I'm looking at this blurb here from DraftKings where Jeremy Sprinkle technically got the start, but he was only limited, and Thomas is on the field for 74% of the plays. Like, this is a guy who I have him on some dynasty teams. I got him in redraft late, picked him up off waivers. If he's going to be able to see this type of usage within this offense that is normally going to be playing from behind in games, as we think that they are, then I want to have some piece of that. And 3,600 for a tight end, I mean, you really don't need him to do a lot to kind of pay off. So I'm looking to play him, get some exposure to some of the other higher pieces, and not really have to chase there. or not chase, but not really having to guess there of who the tight end is going to be that goes off. But of course, this will be the week that high price tight ends pay off. So let's talk about them. We got Kelsey at the top, 7,000. George Kittle, a little disappointing there. He's dealing with a knee, so he was a non-participant in today's practice. We'll have to monitor that going forward. He's 6,700 going against the Jets. Mark Andrews coming in at 6,300, who was another guy that I kind of got on late to kind of get exposure to the Ravens offense there, and paid off nicely. 6,000 price tag. He brought back 22 points in week one matchup with 2 touchdowns. I mean, and the fact that he was on the field even more so than his average was before, you definitely love to see that. Zach Ertz at 5,600, and man, Matty, this is going to be tough with Philly tight ends, with Dallas Goedert. And Kev, I think, was the one, or maybe it was you, but I know one of you guys brought it up last week.
It was
It was you. Okay, give credit where credit's due. So, the way that they're running the 12 personnel there in Philly, and just the way that Goddard's kind of just coming into his own, it's going to be hard to pay up for Zach Ertz on weeks, and it's going to be hard to kind of guess which one who's going to pop off. And this is the team, Carson Wentz he's not a guy that's just going to pepper his favorite target, 12 to 13 times a game. He's going to get Rager involved, Djax involved, Sanders involved now that he's back, Goddard, Ertz. It's just going to be a roulette of guys of who you're, going to be able to trust. So I'm just avoiding that situation for now. I guess if we're looking under 5K, Hayden Hurst does interest me. I had a ton of him in week one. Disappointed a little bit, kind of missed some opportunities there. Had 6 points, so it didn't kill you necessarily, but definitely expected more. And I'm wondering if I can get, with the way that the injuries to the Dallas defense, with Van Der Esch being out and Sean Lee being out, and they have so many injuries going on right now. I'm wondering if I can take advantage of that, going back to Hayden Hurst again in this game and getting a cheap piece of this offense. I know you were talking about Russell Gage, but that was a guy, he's 4,600 that I was looking at getting some exposure to. Without AJ Brown being out there, I do have a little bit of interest in Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith, we were kind of talking about that Denver Steelers game when we were talking about quarterbacks, and he saw 7 targets against Denver. Now, Denver's been a team where I've kind of looked to target tight ends against them of how they play. So there's definitely a favorable matchup for them. But this Jacksonville defense is nothing special. Seeing 7 targets, if AJ Brown is out, he's going to see his fair share of work. And, nice little pivot there off of Corey Davis, who I think, we'll see a majority of the ownership too. And then we, talk about these Tampa Bay tight ends. Gronk, it was his first game back in however many years since he's been playing. So, he was getting dusted off there. But OJ Howard, he falls into a touchdown late. So it kind of made his score more respectable. So I'd be curious to see if you have any interest in those guys there. But talk to me about where your head's at with tight end, knowing that Logan Thomas is the chalk this week.
So don't play Logan Thomas. We'll start there. I think, with all these good spots, I don't think it makes sense to load up on a guy who's, never had a sizable role in any NFL offense ever. And he's, he came in, he played quarterback in college, and he's turned his athleticism into a tight end position. But I think just to, talk as a general on the tight end position, I think you nailed Philly on the head. With Miles Sanders, especially coming back into the fold, maybe Rager gets a little more action. I think the prices that they're at, last week I liked Goddard because he was 4,100. And then this week, now he's in the 5K range, and you've got Zach Ertz around the same price. I think they're just going to cannibalize each other to the point where they maybe have good games, but not necessarily reach their ceilings. Because I'd rather pay 6,300 for Andrews as opposed to 5,600 for Ertz, and then I'd rather play Hunter Henry at 5,100 against the tight end funnel defense and the Chiefs than I would paying that same price for Goddard. So, and I really do like your call on Hayden Hurst. I think he is an athletic tight end. He flashed a diving catch last week. I just think, I think the Falcons realized that they could attack with their wide receivers and didn't necessarily, target Hurst because of that. They, when you can target Julio and Ridley all over the field, you do it. And so I think that, this Dallas defense, their linebacking core is the weakest spot of their defense. And I think you see a lot of success over the middle of the field in the pass game. And we targeted tight ends against Dallas last year. And, week 1, Higbee had a solid game. And so, I especially if you're game stacking that game, that's probably the only way I get to Hurst is whether I'm stacking Dak or Matt Ryan. Because I really like Hunter Henry at 5,100 against the Chiefs because, he's got 100-yard and 2-touchdown upside. And I don't know if Hurst has that.
Yeah, not that we've seen, at least. Yeah.
So, I would rather pay the 400 extra or 500 extra for Hunter Henry if I'm not stacking the Cowboys Rams, I think is how I would go.
Yep.
And then if I'm going cheap, give me the other tight end in that Washington game.
Oh boy.
Dan Arnold.
Here we go. Oh geez.
Dan Arnold. I mean, he's their pass catching tight end, right? And so
right.
They've got Hopkins out there. They've got Kirk. But, I mean, outside of those two guys, I mean, Fitzgerald's getting kind of dusty. They haven't really shown an interest in targeting Isabella a bunch. They utilize Drake in the pass game a little bit. But, I mean, if Dan Arnold goes out and catches 4 passes for 40 or 50 yards and a touchdown and at his little cheap price of like $3K, I mean, I would probably only play him too in a game stack. These fringe type guys where it's like, they kind of have a path to a ceiling, but not really.
Right.
I think they're more suited for game stacks because, if Dan Arnold has a big game, that likely means Kyler Murray's having a big game. So.
Yes. And definitely, I mean, now, you're talking about Dan Arnold. We talked about him in week 1, right? Like you and Kev were excited to play him. But there were so many other tight ends that could get you, kind of usable scores. And if people are playing Logan Thomas at 3,600 and he goes out there and he only gets you 11, but you get Dan Arnold and, he gets 50 and a touchdown. Now you've just got an edge on the field over that. You've saved salary at the tight end position. You've gotten a couple more points, which we know can definitely make a difference, especially in single entry tournaments. 3 to 4 points can kind of put you, over the edge at some point. So definitely if you're playing a ton of teams and you want to get a little bit frisky, or if you're going with the game stack there, having some exposure in that regard could definitdy pay off.
I mean, that is a matchup that Goddard just went for 100 yards and a score.
Right. And Ertz, didn't do terribly as well too. So tight ends being utilized. No, that's interesting, Matty. I definitely love that. I mean, that's why we're the DGen Nation pod. We got to look at all the angles. Of the top tight ends, let's just say that Kittle, he's dealing with this knee injury. So, if he was expected to miss, I mean, my goodness, what are we looking at there? Are we looking at is it Jordan Reed there?
Yeah, I guess it has to be. Don't they get Ayuk is coming back this week, right?
Okay. I haven't looked too much into that, but yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I think he's back. And also the 49ers just get so weird with how they allocate their targets out. Because you got Jerick McKinnon, who's now going to be pretty, he can be heavily involved in the pass game out of the backfield. And, that kind of can work similar to, using a tight end in the middle of the field. So sure. I wouldn't be shocked if they get creative with pass catching running backs to kind of help fill Kittle's void as opposed to just, hey, Jordan Reed, go out here and do it. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of that situation. That's a situation I just kind of need to see it. And also, I will say Kittle is kind of a superhuman because didn't he do this hyperextended knee thing last year too? And he ended up playing the next week.
Oh my God.
Went for 100 yards and something stupid.
You're right. Late in the season. You're right.
We were just like, Kittle just like tore his ACL 5 days ago, and now he just went for over 100 yards. It was like 170. Like, it was something stupid.
Hey man, yeah. I mean, and especially and we saw Jerry Rice kind of rip into them. If anybody saw that, Jerry Rice was ripping into these wide receivers, or even the players who were out there kind of celebrating and not really scoring a touchdown. I think he was referring to the wide receivers specifically, but the wide receivers look like ass. So Kittle is definitely, he is a tight end. He's at the tight end position, but you treat him like a wide receiver. And so you're getting a 6,700 wide receiver there. It's not really a tight end position, but with Andrews and Kelsey being high priced there, are you looking to get to them at all? Like if you're playing a Pat Mahomes, and I know you only play 3 rosters, Matty, but let's say somebody throws in Pat Mahomes, like, would that be a place that you look to get to? Would you be looking to get to Andrews on Lamar Jackson teams? Or are you saying, you know what, these tight ends, they're great, but point per dollar, are they paying off what I can get elsewhere?
So I think on a Pat Mahomes team, I don't think you need Kelsey, because Tyreek Hill could end up catching 1 or 2 touchdowns, and they could involve Edwards-Helaire, that like 5-yard touchdown catch or something like that. We've seen Sammy Watkins catch touchdowns, and I know Demarcus Robinson is not somebody we want to play, but I mean, he's somebody that, Mahomes has shown, like, he's gonna throw to him even if it's, near the end zone. He doesn't care. He's just going to throw to whoever's open. And Robinson would have caught, I think it was 1 or 2 touchdowns last week if he didn't drop them. So, like, Mahomes will target other guys other than Kelsey. And I think you can save $1,900 and just play the tight end on the other side in that game and play Hunter Henry. Because if the Chargers are keeping up, it's because of Hunter Henry. And you need the Chargers to keep up if you're going to pay up for Mahomes. So I think I would just go Henry there. But I think if you're playing Lamar, you absolutely have to play Andrews. I mean,
yeah.
He ran 87% of Lamar's dropbacks he ran a route, whereas last year it was only 50 to 60%. So now we not only have the efficient touches, we are getting volume.
He's got maybe 1 or 2 more games of what he's doing in week 1. Not even the 2 touchdowns, but I'm talking about running the routes and just being involved. And we're putting him into that upper echelon tier. I mean,
absolutely.
He's here. And I know he was getting drafted like that in some regards, and that's definitely paying off for people in redraft leagues. But this dude is amazing, and it's a treat to watch. All right, Matty, so we round out tight ends there. Let's talk about defenses and wrap this up with our team build. And before we get into defense, guys, you can see it if you're watching us. Thank you so much if you've been with us. 2-man pod, 90 minutes in, just in typical DJ Nation fashion. But if you're coming in late, or if you just scrolled through the podcast, or you scroll through the YouTube video, go follow us on Twitter at DGen Nation Pod. That's where you can find us in the Fantasy Authority channels. We're out there too at Fantasy, or at FF_Authority is where you can find Fantasy Authority on Twitter. FantasyAuthority.com, as we said earlier, tons of content. That's where you go for everything that you need in relation to Fantasy Authority. That right there on the website and Instagram, we got content going on over there, the Fantasy Authority. Follow myself on Twitter at Ryan__W. You can follow Matty on Twitter at Matty DFS. And then our usual co-host, the third wheel, who's not with us tonight, but that's Kevin Steele, the Godfather, the Guru, the TFA God. He's on Twitter at FantasyRat13. Matty, we got defenses here that we need to talk about. And I know you're the pay down king. So before you get there, I just want to say, am I crazy for wanting to play the Dolphins this week at home against Josh Allen?
Yes and no.
Okay. So I'm playing them because the turnovers, right? They're at home. Josh Allen is still Josh Allen. I feel like he can get there, and the defense can still be usable, and you're talking about a Miami defense that is not minimum, but $100 over the minimum at 2,100. playing at home. They just faced the New England team, so they're looking to get the ship righted here a little bit. And Josh Allen, just he is going to make some mistakes. It just is. That's what he's going to do. He just hasn't found his rhythm, I don't feel like, in the NFL yet. So he's making throws that he shouldn't be making, trying to keep plays alive, and that's leading to costly turnovers. So I don't really know so much about the Miami defensive unit as a whole, but I know that they're going against Josh Allen, and that could still pay off dividends at 2,100.
As you just talked through it with me, I'm on board. Have you ever played a slate of anything before and you go like kind of all in on something, and then the very next slate, that player, when you don't play them, they go absolutely nuclear?
Yep.
We were all in on the damn Dolphins defense last week, and they got 2 points.
We got bamboozled by Cam.
And now if I don't play them, I know what's going to happen. They're going to pick 6 Josh Allen twice is what's going to happen. And
That's
you kind of talk about it. We know Josh Allen can be turnover prone when because he likes to throw the ball downfield. He threw 46 times week 1 in a game that they controlled from the very first play against the Jets. And he still threw 46 times. So are they just going to say, forget about Singletary, forget about Moss, let's just throw the ball this year?
Hey, man.
And if that's the case, give me Byron Jones and Xavier Howard and this new revamped Dolphins defense against Josh Allen. I will gladly take that at 2,100.
It's the price tag, right? It's 2,100. Like you said, we just went back there last week, and it was against the Patriots, and I feel like it was minimum, so you're not really regretting that all too much. And there was only one defensive score, right, against the Buccaneers, against Tom Brady. So you kind of, it really didn't kill us last week, but this week, looking at the Dolphins, I like them. Go ahead, Matty.
No, just to back you up, Vegas likes it too. 5.5 point spread and a 41 total.
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
So, it's a low scoring, close game that they think, the Dolphins can hang around in. But the 41 total sticks out for me for a defense.
Hell yeah. No, definitely. I just saw them and I had to get them. I wanted before, you probably have some defenses that you like, Matty. And before we get there, I just want to talk about a YouTube comment that we got at the beginning of the show. And my boy, Ray_Gamer, he stuck around, get his question answered. So Ray, we appreciate you listening in. We're going to get your question answered right now. He asked about defense. So he's got the Titans defense versus Jaguars or Saints defense against the Raiders on Monday is what he's looking at. I would tend to, it's crazy, but I would tend to lean, well, damn. I want to stay Saints.
They're both on the road.
They're both on the road.
Let's see what Vegas thinks.
The playmakers.
So Saints are favored by 5.5 and a 49.5 total. And then I think this line's backwards. This says Jaguars -8. That's got to be Jaguars +8, right?
Oh, yeah, it has to be.
Okay, so Titans are favored by 8 and a 44 total. I don't know. Is Minshew turnover prone? I haven't really done that much digging on him because I don't really care about turnovers for Minshew in terms of fantasy points.
Yeah.
Let me pull up.
I don't know. What I do know this is that, Drew Lock definitely had opportunities against this team, this Titans defense. Now they were missing Evans, who started the game and then got disqualified because he, threw a punch or something like that, if I recall correctly. So their middle linebacker is going to be back, their defensive captain. So that's definitely going to change things for them a little bit. But Drew Lock was it. He was finding he got Noah Fant, he got Jerry Jeudy, going a little bit. Jeudy had a drop there that kind of cost them the game, you could argue, in some regards. Except for Vic Fangio's, incompetence in calling timeouts. But, I did see this Tennessee defense ways to get exposed. And if we're not getting AJ Brown on the other side, is this game? I don't know. I guess it could be like a defensive game then, right?
Could slow down, yeah.
Yeah,
so
could slow down.
Looking at Minshew, last year he was sacked 2 or more times in 12 of the 14 games that he played. It just tells you how awful the Jags' offensive line is. And he also threw an interception in 5 out of the 14 games. So, yeah. Okay. Tennessee, like you said, their linebacker who got ejected, like that was important, that he missed that game because he's the heart and soul of that defense. And they've got Clowney. The Raiders can do some weird stuff. Like Carr, I don't really think Carr is – I can look him up too if you want to talk about another defense, like for DFS purposes. I'll pull up Carr's numbers. But I lean the Titans. I lean the Titans.
That's fair. The Saints are on the road, and I tend to just I know their defense better because of the stars that are on that D, but they are on the road there. We'll see. We'll see if the Raiders are for real. If they are going to keep it going with Josh Jacobs here, if they're going to let Derek Carr the training wheels off, but he's going to be able to have to find some of these guys like Darren Waller. Didn't really have a great game there on Sunday. Ruggs, got a little bit banged up. Edwards didn't look great. So it's Josh Jacobs or bust. But, we got at the top. Go ahead.
I was just going to finish off the question. Carr only threw 8 picks in 16 games last year. So, he took good care of the ball. And
game manager.
Hasn't the Raiders' offensive line gotten better over the last couple of years too?
Yeah, no, I think they've done a lot of things to kind of build off of the the opportunities they've had, and they've garnered so many draft picks, and they kind of it seems like they're just building around there for a future of this offense, and so yeah, that game could be weird too. It's on Monday night.
It could be.
So the Titans probably are the safer play there. So Ray, appreciate you sticking around to hear us talk that out. But Matty, let's talk about these defenses before we close it out here. So we got 49ers at the top at 4K going against the Jets on the road. Buffalo on the road against Miami at 3,900. Steelers come in at the third highest price at 3,800, which seems like people will chase that number because of what they were able to do on Monday Night Football. Bears for some reason, I guess because of all the sacks that Pittsburgh garnered, but the Giants or the Bears against the Giants are 3,700, the fourth highest price. Absolutely no way. So outside of the Dolphins, what I guess what I'm looking at is where I can get where I feel like I can get opportunities from turnovers. And am I crazy to think that playing the Cardinals defense when I know that they really don't have that many playmakers, but they're going against Dwayne Haskins in a home game that they should win favorably, and they come in at 3,000, kind of middle of the pack. But what's funny about defense this week, Matty, is if you look at the OPR RK there, where we usually can see red, neutral, or green, there's no green light defense this week. So you see a ton at the top, and it's just red, and a couple of grays, and that's about it. So really no like favorable matchups, quote unquote.
Because they both played tonight on Thursday.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, I'm interested in the Cardinals at 3K, but I'll probably just have a ton of the Miami defense on DraftKings at 2,100.
I like that. I like the Dolphins call, and I really don't mind the Cardinals call too, especially if nobody's going to play them because they want to play Logan Thomas.
Right.
The only other defense that I see that's remotely cheap would be the Rams, if Philly is without starting linemen again.
Okay.
Washington just had 8 sacks and forced 2 turnovers last week.
Right.
So you get Aaron Donald against some backups. Yes, please sign me up for that.
Yes, that could be nice. And we will have to talk about it at some point. Like, and maybe it's after this game. Let's see what the Eagles do. But this Eagles team could be struggling with wins, dude. I don't want to say it, but they did draft Jalen Hurts. Maybe
Yeah.
it was for a reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh man, I digress. But yeah, that's what we're looking at for the DGen Nation pod on defense. Again, paying up for 4K or near 4K for a defense. I mean, you really have to get them to score a touchdown or to go just berserk. Go like what Washington was getting.
Defensive touchdowns are completely random too.
Right.
Like obviously they can happen. They're more likely to happen if you can get like a sack fumble or you get pressure on the quarterback and he, throws one up as he's getting hit and throws an interception. Like those are obviously you can create more opportunities by getting more pressure on the quarterback, which is, why people want to play the Steelers and whatnot. But at the same time, the touchdowns are completely random and it can happen. Like we saw the Saints last week, pick six Tom Brady, the GOAT. So
right.
It's like,
oh man, crazy. Only one. So yeah, so that's defenses. That's where we're looking. And Matty, we it's a tradition. We can't let Kev not being here on the pod break the tradition. So we got to build a team, man. And if we hit it, I'm going to enter it into a single entry GPP. I'll tweet it out like I did last week. I'll tweet it out, let people know where we entered it in and kind of what our roster is. And again, this is on Thursday, so some of these plays could be subject to change, but we got to do the week 2 lineup for the DGen Nation pod for the main slate here. And guys, if you're tuning in, and I see people who are coming in and who've been joining us, it's DGen Nation podcast. You find us on Twitter at DGen Nation pod. Your host, Ryan Williams, myself at Ryan Alexander _W, Matty Dickinson at Matty DFS, and then Kev Steele, who's not with us tonight, but he's going to be back and ready to go for week 3. He just took a little hiatus. He's at Fantasy Rat 13. So go ahead and follow us. And guys, thank you so much for sticking around, and thank you for the ratings and all the love that we've been getting. We really appreciate it. That's been coming in, and I said last week, if you guys go out, rate and review the podcast anywhere, or let's even take it another further step. If you like a video, comment on YouTube, or send us a message on Twitter. I'm sending money so you can play DFS yourself. I'll send you $5 to your account. Just tell me how you want it sent to you. Reach out to us directly and we'll get that done. Just for leaving a 5-star rating on the podcast, on your podcast software, or giving us a subscribe, and a comment on YouTube. And I want to hook you guys up. So appreciate everybody showing us the love. DGen Nation's got to give back. So Matty, we got the week 2 DFS slate. You want to start it off, or you want me to start it off with this build?
Well, I think in honor of Kev being in the comments, we let him start it off.
Okay.
He wants Tyreek at wide receiver.
He wants in, even though he's not on the pod.
He wants in. So technically he didn't miss the pod. He's still contributing.
Hey, we love that. All right. Give the people what they want. Let's go. Kev, Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. That's fine. Matty, you pick it up from there.
No, you go, because I don't want to take the I don't want the reins. Please don't make me do that.
That's fine. I'm going Amari Cooper then at wide receiver.
Okay. All right. I'll go somewhat chalky with a lock, Jonathan Taylor.
That's fair. Let's see if Kev can get in there and see if he wants to, continue this on, as Kev has got secondary duties this week, but we got to show him love and let him be able to get in. So right now we got Jonathan Taylor. He's a running back. We got Tyreek Hill at wide receiver and Amari Cooper as another wide receiver, which leaves us about $5,000 per player, remaining salary of $30K and $500. And it looks like Kev wants Miles Sanders at running back at $6K.
I like it.
So we got Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper. We need a quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense. And it's on me. So since you took chalk, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to go Miami at defense.
All right. Give me a not chalky Russell Gage.
Ooh, baby. Okay. Now we got something to cook with here. We're cooking with gas. So we got 58.66 per player left. $17,600 in total salary for the QB position, the tight end position, and the flex. And Kev, it's on you. And he went Dak at quarterback to pair up with Amari Cooper there. So we got the Dak to Amari Cooper stack, running it back with Russell Gage, Miles Sanders, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, or Dolphins D, excuse me. So I like how this team is building up, Matty. It's 5-4 per player for me and you, and we got tight end and flex left to fill out.
All right, you got it. Because he just took Dak, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's on you.
Oh, that's right. It is on me.
I'll close it out.
Okay, so let's see. We got a couple interesting ways where we can go here. And tight end is going to be key. So I'm going to say this right now, Matty. I'm going to play Mark Andrews.
Okay.
And see what you can do from there. He's 6,300, so that leaves you 4,500 for the flex.
Oh, that's easy money.
Where are we going?
That should be Paris Campbell, right?
It's Paris Campbell in the flex. Now, we're going to do something here. Paris Campbell was the player for our flex, but because he plays in the noon games and Tyreek Hill plays in the afternoon games, we're going to move Tyreek Hill to the flex there. Just in case something crazy were to happen, we want to make sure that we can be able to pivot off of that. And we don't want our flex to be taken up by somebody who has already played. So the team right now, as it stands, is going to be Dak Prescott, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, Paris Campbell, Amari Cooper, Russell Gage for the wide receivers, tight end Mark Andrews, and Tyreek Hill in the flex with Dolphins D to round it out. $0 left, which I don't think we've built a team in a while that has used all the salaries. So maybe this is good luck for us. So
maybe.
That is great. Kev also chiming into the comments that Dan Arnold is scoring a touchdown this week. Book it. That means that will be screenshotted right there. I want to be able to use that next week, regardless of if there's a touchdown scored or not. For next week, but
Kev's channeling his inner father narrative.
You're right, exactly.
Got baby narrative. So
what he has is FOMO for missing out on the podcast this week. That's for sure. First ever time he missed the pod. But guys, that is going to do it here for the DJ Nation podcast. That was your week 2 NFL DFS main slate talk with the DJ Nation. We appreciate everybody for joining us, and we can't wait to hear from you guys. Guys, you can reach out to DJ Nation Pod or reach out to the Fantasy Authority FF_authority on Twitter. Get into our Slack chat, guys. We got so many channels going live right now. With we got general chats in there. If you have want to talk about redraft or just anything football, you can come in and talk about that. Dynasty channel has been lit with so much good content coming out from our Dynasty guys. DFS, we got stuff for you guys. We're in there just talking shop, sharing plays, sharing processes, just talking everything that we can about the slates. And we appreciate everybody who's been with us, from the inception, but we want to open it up to everybody else who's interested. So reach out to us there, get involved. We'll send you the Slack invite link, and we can't wait to see you in there. FantasyAuthority.com, guys. That's where you can find everything that's going on with the site and what content we're producing and putting out. A lot of good stuff that's coming through. Hopefully you guys are tuning in to the YouTube, as there's been great videos coming out every week with who to start and sit in your redraft leagues. We're going to have some DFS content coming out there very soon. I can promise you that. And the DFS podcast is living on there too, the DJ Nation podcast. So like I said, guys, go out there, subscribe to our content, like our content, comment, give us a 5-star rating, and we'll send some money your way. I mean, all you got to do is do that. Screenshot it, reach out to me, and we'll hook you up. It's the DJ Nation podcast, signing off for Matty Dickinson at Matty DFS. I am the other co-host at Ryan Alexander_W is where you can find us on Twitter. And we will see you next week for the week 3 slate. But until then, get that money. And we hope to see you guys all at the top of the leaderboards very soon. DJ Nation signing off. Peace.